New York, London, Paris, Munich, everyone's talking about
pop music.
It's another episode of How the Hell Did This Go #1? And I didn't pick this one. Andrea didn't pick it. Brad didn't pick it. Our special guest last week picked it, and he's not here to help us talk about it. So he's not here to talk about
Pop music.
Shooby dooby doo up.
Want to dedicate it.
Bop bop shoo up.
Something, something, something. Okay.
Disco with a suitcase. Or boogie with a suitcase, sorry.
Suitcase, yes. A song far more important than I really remembered it to be. Here's my early memories of this. I would have been 7 when this came out, and I remember my young cousin had this on a 45. And you go over to their house, and she'd be playing that one over and over and over again. It's like that was a universal song that did exceptionally well by one guy. I'm not going to say M because let's just say Robin Scott, because that was M. A precursor, I think, for a lot of these producers who just really are one-man operations.
Yeah. This song was ahead of its time in so many ways. I would have guessed it was, I full on thought it was 80s. I thought it was like 82, 83. But it's not. It's 1979. It's at this synth pop, new wave,
Splash
weird
of disco.
What?
A splash of disco.
A splash of disco, but it marks the end of disco.
I think we already sort of did that when we looked at Funky Town.
Yeah. There's others. Video Killed the Radio Star is another one kind of in that.
But this one is heralded as one of the first new wave hits.
Well, it was the first #1 new wave hit.
Yeah. There's a lot of new wave that's. This is definitely the first synth pop. There's other new wave that's not quite as new wavy, that never really made the charts. You think it was kind of more on the garage band,
small club kind of thing.
Yeah, that it was kind of just there throughout the disco era, but disco just dominated everything.
Yeah. So
this is Scott and his wife, Bridget Novak.
Doesn't matter.
His wife at the time was the backup on this, and they've got the women in the video are lip syncing this, and then it cuts to her in the blue sweater, and she's actually the one singing the track. Yeah, she looks a little like
she looks really bored, and the backup model dancers look really stoned.
I was
like
gonna
high,
say,
not stoned, like tripping.
This is take 15 for her doing this shot, and the models they got enough heroin to see them through the day.
I'd probably go with cocaine, but
Oh, they were way not animated enough for coke.
Anyway, they
like a man of experience.
No, never done the hard stuff.
Oh, I was talking about me, but anyway.
But everything about this song and the performance of it shows excited disinterest. Like,
that's a good way of putting it.
The way he says the lyrics, there's a level of excitement, but also this monotony that's like, I can't explain it. It robotic excitement.
Murray Head, One Night in Bangkok.
Ooh, that'd be when we expand the show to How the Hell Was This a Hit? That would be a really fun one to do. So
I was looking at that one, and then I realized it never went to #1, and I was sad because I love that song.
Your head's down over your pieces, brother.
It's a crime. It's a board. It's really such a pity. Should be looking at the board, not looking at the city.
Wait a minute.
What do you mean?
Okay.
It's in one crowded, polluted, stinking town.
So you get that, and you get the B-52s sort of coming into their new wave-ish stuff there as well. because they were not far behind on that train.
Yeah, but they were incorporating so much stuff, the B-52s. That would be another fun one to look at. Taking a look at, here's the one thing why would I have known this? So he was good friends with Malcolm McLaren. So a big part of the Sex Pistols, well, Malcolm McLaren was essentially the guy, the Svengali behind the Sex Pistols. And the late 70s are a fascinating time period with so much different music going on, and how punk essentially begat new wave in its own way. New wave was that reaction, and a lot of those punk groups did. I mean, just look at Joy Division to New Order. I mean, like where that went. When
Let's Dance to Joy Division.
Why did that sound like the Muppets?
Oh no.
We got something that works, you run with it, and there's a lot of Muppets. So this guy, Robin Scott, so he had pretty much tried a whole bunch of shit, and just, it felt like for 5 years he was throwing crap at a wall just to see what would stick.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah. And so he comes up with this nut, which really wasn't much like anything else he had ever done. More or less put it together himself. He did have some studio musicians.
The Factor.
The Factor?
The musicians that he had were called The Factor. Okay. And he described them as a less of a group and more of an association. Less of a musical group and more of an association.
Yeah, because that was sort of avant-garde.
Yeah, well, yeah. It was a happening, dude. It was a happening.
So I listened to what was the first track, or his first single, which I actually liked, Modern Man, although they added an E at the end of it. I don't quite know why. Did either of you listen to that?
I did not.
No, okay. That one's got far greater new wave vibes to it. And I can see why they went with that one as his first solo release. Bombed. But this one, why did it work?
It was a product of its time. We're coming on a disco. This, like I said, had a splash of disco in it. So it's translating into the 80s by bringing something old into what was evolving into the new. And I think it's sort of, okay, the 80s were a coke-fueled decade. They really were. And so that excited disinterest that you were talking about there, Andrea, before fits in really well with that, because this song is just a stream of consciousness, basically. There's no there's not a lot of sense. It's a whole lot of ideas strung together with no real meat.
He said that he was very influenced by disco. One quote I kept reading over and over again was how he liked how disco brought a lot of people together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I guess he misremembered it or didn't remember it the same way I did. Disco, might have had a lot of different people in the clubs dancing to it. Having said that, there was a whole bunch of people who also united against it. Had he called it, yes, yourself included, had he called this, talk about disco music, this would have not have been number one.
No, we have to remember this got to number one in the US 6 months after it got to number 2 in the UK. So this is a time where disco is dying. It's been around, it's done its thing. There's been too many disco hits that all sound the same. People are getting tired of it.
And nobody pulled the plug on it. So this gave enough of a transition with a little bit of a disco feel. So, you're comfortable there. But it created a new sound, basically,
new to most people.
New to most people. And it was hugely ahead of its time for the synth pop style of it. He tried to do it as R&B, and he also tried to record it as funk. And I cannot.
I was looking for it. I couldn't find it.
No, but I can't even imagine. It would not have worked. But this just is such a cheesy, silly little bop that it's catchy, it's an earworm, and it's different enough to feel new while being
Which it
sane
was.
enough to feel comfortable.
It was a gateway.
Yeah, and I think it
Or
really
drugs, it was the marijuana.
united some of the disco lovers with the disco haters by giving a,
Mhm.
Because I
it
could
appealed
listen
to
to
both
this
sides.
and not hate it. Whereas with disco, I pretty much cringe as soon as I start hearing any of it, because it's, it was overdone. Like you were saying before, disco died and it took a long while to die. And it was in its very geriatric stages. It's sitting on life support. And the record companies are still trying to squeeze out those last couple of bucks from it. And then this guy comes along and creates this song, which opens up the doors for not just synth pop, but begins new wave as well. So you've got this. You could easily see the transition between this and, let's say, New Order. New Order goes darker and heavier, but you can see the origins. It's got the same grandmother, basically. It's in its lineage.
Didn't though, like when did Joy Division record a lot of their stuff? I think they started recording in 78. So they probably all knew the same people.
It's quite possible. And of course, inspiration begets inspiration. So, you're going to look to other, that's why people always ask bands, oh, who are your influences?
I read something too on an interview or something else, somebody put together a blog. So we wouldn't have picked this up as Canadians, or I'm sure the Americans wouldn't have picked this up either. There were lines in this, listen to the countdown, and I'm on the hit line. Both the countdown and hit line were weekly chart programs on Capital Radio in the late 70s. I'm assuming that's in England. And well, DJs like to sort of play anything that sort of references them. Why was there so many songs about Wolfman fucking Jack?
Clap for the Wolfman.
He's gonna take that record high.
Yeah. And of course, you mentioned the Rolling Stone, and you go up in fame like that too.
I just watched a 10-minute thing on Dr. Hook while I was supposed to be logging in. Like an idiot, I thought we were doing this at 9:00. I blame Evan Nolan because we pushed it back an hour for him last time.
We can blame him. Sure, he's not here to defend himself.
As my father has always told me, only an idiot blames himself. Needless to say, he's never been wrong about anything. Even when
this one ushers out. It opens up the door and gently shoves disco out the door. It didn't push or anything like that, and gives birth to the synth heavy 80s.
It had a long life too, especially in the States, because it was one of the few videos that MTV could play.
Mm-hmm.
It worked that. So that was still, I'm going to say, in the main consciousness for at least a couple years after it became a hit in the US.
Yeah.
So it is something that everybody knows, but they probably couldn't tell you who did it.
It's also a great video. It's cheesy as hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a bunch of little Easter egg references throughout it, different things. And it's just, it doesn't take itself or anything seriously. So I can see why it got a lot of MTV airtime.
Mm-hmm.
And again, video killed the radio star. That's
what ushered it all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Funny story about this song and how it relates to my life personally. Last night, I'm in the grocery store and I'm cruising down the frozen food aisle and considering ice cream and easy to make for one dinners. And this
Chef
song comes
Lonely
on.
Hearts?
Hey?
From Chef Lonely Hearts?
Yes, that's the one. He's Chef Boyardee's cousin. But yeah,
Chef Boyardee don't.
Chef Boyardee, no. Going down the aisle, all of a sudden I hear this song come on. I video call Andrea right away. I'm like, you have to listen, and I put the phone up, and it doesn't work. She can't hear it over the freezer noise, and I guess other people around, and it was pretty quiet. But
I still appreciated the thought that
it's still pretty bad when you go into the grocery store as an adult now, and you go, they're playing some banging tunes.
Yep, this is my jam in the jam aisle.
Yeah.
It used to be for me, it's like, shit, all the bands I like are now in the bargain bin. Now, now the kids don't know what a record store is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Now
still
they're in the
remember
thrift store.
working in a grocery store when I was the ripe old age of about 18 years old. And America's Horse with No Name would come on way more often than should be legal. And I hate that song so hard because it sounds like Neil Young. It's not Neil Young, but it sounds like Neil Young.
La, da, 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 da.
Yeah. And the lyrics to that one, because in the desert, you don't remember your name because there ain't no one for to give you no pain.
I mean, he was probably on heroin when he wrote it because that's obviously what it's about. So
Chasing the H.
you
That
didn't know that a horse with no name is heroin?
Well, sometimes the last time I saw a horse, I kind of wish it had no name because the owner named the white owner, and I have to bring that up, this was in Barbados, named the horse Mandingo.
Ugh.
Yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. Say no more, say no more.
Yeah, I mean, I said to her, like, well, what was the horse? And I just kept my mouth shut because Pauline was actually rode the horse into the ocean. It was swimming with the horse. I didn't want to wreck that.
Yeah.
By sort of making a
funny story about his name, Pauline.
Yeah. Afterwards, she asked me, like, why did you make that face? All tears, why? Because she wouldn't know what that is, or the whole reference of that. But
all right, back to
moving right along.
Music.
Yeah, so he had another. Well, he had the third release off this. I tried to listen to that. Moonlight and Muzik sucked. I don't recommend anyone sort of like check that one out because it was really, really awful.
No, this was a one-hit wonder for him. And really, he had a bit more of a career in the UK, but not by much.
No, because he couldn't sing, first off, and by that point, a lot of the other new wave artists were just so much better than he was, and could do so much more. He became obsolete of one of the very things that he helped create.
Yeah.
I don't see anything where he was bitter. I think he's still alive. I honestly,
I think had he stuck to his original formula,
still alive.
He's still alive. Okay.
His original formula of synth heavy, spoken lyrics, a little obscure, just sort of train of thought lyrics kind of thing. I think he would have done okay, but I think he was too experimental to want to settle for doing the same thing. And I think that's what gave us pop music and why we didn't get another one. This was it was a one-off. It was a little stroke of creative genius and people responded to it.
Yeah. And I think also too, I mean, going back to the whole radio play, he viewed himself as sort of like as a DJ. Sort of like when he sort of wrote it, like he was in control of the whole thing. And of course, DJs are going to play that. It spoke to them. It spoke to us, or the listening public. It was very, very different. And good on him. He did something unique. Then he kept doing his own thing afterwards. I read that he got into African rhythms a few years later, but I couldn't find any of his work. So, because like that's sort of like been lately my kick is just sort of the history of African music for those who are interested in that. Any final thought here on the letter M?
I think this is a fun song. It's aged well in the sense that it was ridiculous when it came out and it's still ridiculous, but I can listen to it and enjoy it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it was never really overplayed. I think it was played enough that, it became part of the collective consciousness kind of thing, but it wasn't overplayed to the point of you being completely sick of it. Like when Bieber, put baby, baby, baby out there and you got tired of hearing that. You just don't want to hear the word baby anymore. But no, this gave birth, or at least helped. It was a stair on the way to what became, 80s new wave.
Yeah, a very important cog, and I didn't realize how much until we really started delving into this. So Evan, thanks for that. Hey, guys, did you know I wrote a book?
Wait a minute, you wrote a book?
You wrote a book?
Yeah, I wrote a book. Yeah, check it out. Chavo Guerrero, instant classic. It's about the late, great Chavo Guerrero Sr., and I helped him write his autobiography before he died.
What's it called?
Instant classic. You can get that on Amazon.
You should say that one more time.
Chavo Guerrero, instant classic. Yeah. Next week, I think we're going back with my pick, right?
Yes.
All right. So that was the one that Brad liked. Because we're looking at the glam metal scene. The only time we'll look at Poison. Every rose has its thorn. Too bad it's not Unskinny Bop, but there really wouldn't be much to say. Just he didn't want to say fat chick.
Fat dance.
Yeah. So we've got that to look forward to next week. Coming out shortly, I hope, is where Chris Bourdain and I looked at. This crap was on national television. That 80s show. Holy shit, was that awful. Awful. We talked about the 80s here. God, such a piece of shit. Evan Nolan and I, we do the weekly Hall of Fame show. That's always something to check out. And I'm so happy. Finally, it's going to be returned after a 1-year hiatus because my partner on this was in Antarctica. True story. The Classic Sports Review is going to be back, and we're going to be looking at the first ever USFL game in 1983. Andrea, you remember where you were when the USFL came out the first time?
In 1983, I have basically no memories of that year. It must have been wild.
You must have been doing too many drugs.
And Brad, you were watching, I'm sure, as a young sports fan. Oh, wait a minute. No, you weren't.
Yeah, I was 10 years old, and even back then, I was kind of cheering for the Canucks because that's what we did in my family.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the end of my plugs. No more plugging.
And you want me to leave that one alone, eh?
No, I don't.
Okay.
This was a softball. I was waiting.
That's what she said. And also, Kirk, it's pronounced pegging.
I do live So from Winnipeg to plugging in from my house.
Wait, win a what?
Your hotel room?
From my hotel room. From my hotel room to Andrea's house to Brad, the Mr. Furley of his generation.
Do you have a view out that window, Kirk?
Yeah, but it's can't really see anything because it's just all.
How much snow you got?
A lot less than we did yesterday.
Oh.
Look at how green my backyard is. I mean, that's really just glare, but that means it's sunny out right now.
Okay.
It's a gazebo.
Gazebo.
Well, it's there's still quite a bit of snow. So be it. Such is life. Such is life. 5-1 Winnipeg right now. So that's sort of a good thing. That's hockey talk for all those not aware. I'm rambling, and I was sort of like already had this wrapped up in a nice little bow, and then I unraveled it because that's what I do. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, stay safe, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.